The orbital trade station Nexus Gate was a place where you could find anything, from fresh Terran strawberries to black market plasma rifles. Built like a giant wheel turning slowly in the blackness, it served as a meeting point between dozens of alien civilizations. For most people, it was just a waypoint. For Jack Marin, it was a delivery stop. Jack wasn't a diplomat, soldier, or hero. He was a cargo pilot, a man who moved crates for credits. His ship, the Blue Comet, wasn't fast, fancy, or even fully working half the time, but it got him where he needed to go. Today, where he needed to go was Docking Ring C, specifically, the Lumaris Embassy Sector. The Lumaris were a proud, aquatic humanoid species, tall, elegant, with smooth skin that shimmered faintly like fish scales under bright light. They had enormous black eyes, gill lines along their necks, and a way of speaking that made even insults sound like music. Jack's job was simple: deliver a sealed package to the Lumaris representative. He didn't ask what was inside. In his experience, asking questions in a place like Nexus Gate only made trouble. A simple delivery, right? Jack had the delivery crate slung over one shoulder as he walked through the curved corridors of the embassy wing. The walls were covered in glimmering mosaics that shifted with the light, and the air smelled faintly of salt water. He followed the signs. At least he thought he did. The Lumaris language was elegant but confusing, all flowing curves and symbols that looked like water ripples. He turned left at what he thought was the reception hall marker, walked down a long hall lined with shimmering doors, and stopped in front of a panel labeled in both Lumari script and small Galactic standard. The standard text read, "Private quarters, do not enter." Jack frowned. This didn't look like an embassy reception area, but he'd been walking in circles for the last 20 minutes, and his patience was wearing thin. Maybe the ambassador's office was just beyond this point. He tapped the door panel. It slid, open with a soft chime. The wrong room inside, the lighting was soft and tinted blue. A faint mist hung in the air, carrying the scent of warm salt water. The room was spacious, with flowing fabrics hanging from the ceiling and pools of water sunk into the floor. Jack stepped in cautiously. "Hello? Lumaris Embassy delivery here." His words froze in his throat. Across the room, standing beside a tall, curved bathing structure, was a Lumari woman. She was tall, graceful, with skin the soft silver blue of moonlight on a calm sea. Her black eyes went wide in shock as she turned toward him. Her gill lines fluttered, and a drop of water slid down her cheek. She wasn't wearing much. In fact, she was wearing nothing but the thin steam rising from the bath. For one long second, both of them just stared at each other. Jack's brain screamed at him to leave, now, right now, but his body had locked up like a faulty cargo bay door. Then she moved. The blaster, a small ceremonial table, stood beside her, and on it rested a plasma sidearm, elegant, curved, and engraved, with Lumari patterns. Her hand darted toward it in one fluid motion. Jack's instincts finally kicked in. He raised both hands instantly, the package still dangling awkwardly from one shoulder. "Whoa, hey, wait! Sorry, wrong room! Totally my fault!" The Lumari woman didn't lower the weapon. Her voice was sharp and musical all at once. "You entered uninvited. You saw what no outsider is permitted to see." "Yeah, sorry about that. I'll just go." Jack began edging toward the door, heart pounding. The blaster hummed, glowing faintly. "You will stay where you are. Look, I swear this was an accident. I was looking for the ambassador's office. The door behind Jack slid open. Again, and this time, 3 Lumari security officers entered, their ceremonial armor gleaming. Under arrest, the leader, a broad-shouldered Lumari with a crest of silver fins, took one look at the scene and barked an order. "Human, drop the package and step away from the Lady Zara." Jack froze. "Lady Zara?" He had no idea who that was, but it sounded important. The woman with the blaster, Zara, apparently, didn't lower it. Instead, she gave the security leader a glare sharp enough to cut steel. He saw me in an unguarded state. You know, the law. The leader's eyes flicked to Jack, then back to Zara. Yes, my lady. Two guards stepped forward, grabbing Jack by the arms. Hey, I didn't do anything. This is a mix-up. They didn't respond. Instead, the leader tapped, a comm device on his wrist. Inform the High Commander, we have an incident. The commander arrives. Minutes later, Jack was standing in a larger, more ornate chamber, still held by the guards. Zara stood off to one side, now wrapped in a flowing garment of sea silk, her blaster holstered. The air shimmered as the doors opened, and in walked the High Commander. He was an imposing figure, nearly 7 feet tall, with skin the deep blue of midnight seas. His ceremonial armor gleamed like polished coral, and the crest of silver fins along his head stood tall. His black eyes swept the room, cold and assessing, before locking on Jack. This is the human? Yes, Father, Zara replied, her voice tight. Jack's brain stuttered. Father? Oh, no. The commander stepped closer, his presence heavy enough to make the room feel smaller. You entered my daughter's private quarters without permission. You saw her without the dignity of proper attire. This is a grave breach of honor. Jack opened his mouth. Look, sir, I didn't mean to... The commander raised a hand, silencing him. Under Lumari law, such an offense can only be answered in one of two ways, by blood or by binding union. Jack blinked. I'm sorry, what? The commander's expression didn't change. Marriage, human, to restore the honor you have taken. The choice, Jack laughed once nervously. That's funny. Good joke. Now, if we can just... No joke, the commander interrupted, voice as calm as still water. If you choose blood, we will duel until death. If you choose binding, the marriage will be conducted within the next solar cycle. Jack stared at him. Duel to the death with a 7-foot alien warrior, or marry his daughter, who currently looked like she'd rather feed him to a deep-sea predator. This is insane. I was delivering a package, Jack said. Your carelessness brought dishonor. The law is absolute, the commander replied. Choose. Jack glanced at Zara. Her expression was unreadable, but her arms were crossed, and she clearly wasn't about to speak up for him. His survival instincts, honed by years of dodging pirates and bad contracts, made the decision for him. I guess I choose marriage? The commander nodded once. Then it is settled. A very unhappy bride. The guards released Jack, but he didn't feel any freer. Zara stepped forward, her tone like ice. I do not want this union. Neither do I, Jack shot back. Then you should have chosen blood, she replied sharply. Yeah, see, I like breathing and being alive. Her black eyes narrowed. You will regret this. The commander's voice cut through the tension. You will both prepare. The union will take place on Lumaris Prime tomorrow. Security will escort the human to guest quarters. He will remain under watch until the ceremony. Jack sighed. This is going to be the weirdest week of my life. Tomorrow, the commander corrected. It will be the weirdest day of your life. The trip to Lumaris Prime within the hour. Jack found himself aboard a Lumari diplomatic transport, its walls lined with flowing water channels and gentle blue lights. The guards weren't unfriendly, but they made it clear he wasn't free to wander. He sat in his cabin, staring out the viewport at the swirling stars. He'd made 100 deliveries across the galaxy without serious trouble. Sure, he'd been chased by pirates a couple times, but this? Accidentally walking into the wrong room and ending up in a royal marriage? That was a first. Somewhere else on the ship, Zara was no doubt fuming about this as much as he was. Jack leaned back, rubbing his face. I've really stepped in it, this time. Arrival Lumaris Prime was breathtaking. From orbit, the planet gleamed like a sapphire, with vast oceans dotted by shining cities built on coral platforms. Towering crystal spires rose from the water, linked by curved bridges. The ship descended into the capital, a mix of ancient architecture and advanced tech. The air was warmer here, humid and scented with sea breeze. Jack was escorted to a set of ornate guest quarters overlooking the ocean. It might have been luxurious if it didn't feel like a very nice prison. Through the wide crystal windows, he could see the preparations already beginning in the great ceremonial plaza below. Jack Marin had been in strange situations before, negotiating with smugglers, hauling a shipment of frozen alien birds that came back to life mid-flight, even escaping a customs inspection by pretending to be part of the cleaning crew. But nothing had prepared him for being forced into marriage with an alien noblewoman because of honor laws. Now, as the Lumari diplomatic transport streaked through hyperspace toward Lumaris Prime, Jack sat in his assigned cabin, staring at the ceiling. The gentle hum of the engines and the faint sound of flowing water in the walls should have been relaxing. Instead, his mind kept replaying the moment he had walked through the wrong door and seen Zara standing in the steam. He groaned. Why, couldn't I just get lost in a normal way, like everyone else? Guarded company. A soft chime sounded, and the cabin door slid open. 2 Lumari guards stepped in, tall, silver blue, with ceremonial armor that gleamed in the ship's blue lighting. "Your commander wishes to see you," one said in a voice that was calm, but left no room for argument. Jack sighed, got to his feet, and followed them through the winding corridors. The ship's interior was elegant, curved hallways, soft light panels, and sections of flowing water running along the walls. Occasionally, he passed small alcoves where Lumari crew sat cross-legged, meditating in low musical tones. They reached a larger chamber. The High Commander was there, standing beside a large viewing window, hands clasped behind his back. Zara stood near him, wearing a flowing blue robe, her posture stiff. The commander turned. "Human, you will land on Lumaris Prime within the next hour. The union ceremony will take place tomorrow at the first tide." Jack raised his hands in a helpless gesture. "Look, I still think this is a huge misunderstanding. I didn't mean to—" The commander's voice was firm. "Intent does not erase dishonor. Our law is older than the tides themselves. It is unbreakable." Jack glanced at Zara. She didn't look at him. Her gaze was fixed on the floor. A private word after. The commander dismissed the guards. Zara finally spoke. Her voice was cold, like water in the deep ocean. "I want you to understand something, human. I am agreeing to this only because the alternative would cause political chaos. Do not think for a moment that I welcome this arrangement." Jack folded his arms. "Oh, believe me, the feeling is mutual. I don't exactly dream about marrying someone who points a blaster at me 5 minutes after we meet." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Then perhaps you should have chosen the duel." Jack gave her a look. "I like breathing, and I'm pretty sure your dad could knock me into next week without breaking a sweat." For the first time, something that almost looked like a smirk touched her lips, but it vanished quickly. She turned away. "We will endure tomorrow. Afterward, perhaps we will find a way to make this arrangement minimal." Arrival at Lumaris Prime. The ship emerged from hyperspace and Lumaris Prime filled the viewport. It was stunning. An ocean world with bright blue waters, swirling white clouds, and chains of glittering cities built across coral platforms and crystal spires. The capital city, Zareth's crown, rose from the sea like a jewel. Towering spires curved toward the sky, connected by arched bridges. Waterfalls cascaded down from the heights into deep pools, The transport descended into the spaceport, which was shaped like an enormous seashell. As Jack stepped out with his guards, the air hit him, warm, humid, and scented with salt. The sound of waves echoed faintly even here. Ceremonial preparations. Jack was escorted to the guest wing of the Royal Hall. His quarters were large, with walls made of translucent crystal that gave a view of the endless ocean. Far below, he could see thousands of Lumari workers preparing the central plaza for the wedding. The plaza was a massive circular platform surrounded by flowing water channels. He could make out glowing lanterns being hung, musicians rehearsing, and long rows of tables being set for what would probably be the biggest dinner of his life. But Jack's attention drifted to the shadows under the platform. There were small maintenance tunnels, and he noticed a group of figures moving quickly through them. Too far to identify, but they weren't moving like regular workers. Meeting the helper. That evening, a Lumari servant brought Jack a meal, grilled sea, fruit, and a soft, sweet bread that tasted faintly of honey. The servant, a young Lumari with dark green eyes, leaned closer before leaving. "You are the human who will marry Lady Zara," he whispered. Jack raised an eyebrow. "That's what they tell me." The servant glanced toward the door to make sure no one was listening. "Be careful. There are some who do not want this union to happen. There are whispers of outsiders in the city." "Outsiders?" Jack asked. The servant didn't answer directly. "Watch the shadows beneath the plaza. They move when the guards look away." Before Jack could ask more, the servant bowed quickly and left. The unhappy bride. Later, Jack was summoned to a formal dinner with Zara and a few Lumari officials. The table was long, covered in silver plates and glowing glass pitchers of seawater-based drinks. Zara sat at the far end, speaking quietly with one of the advisors. When her gaze finally met Jack's, it was brief and cool. The conversation around the table was polite but distant. Most of the Lumari seemed curious about Jack, but also wary. To them, he wasn't just an outsider. He was a wild card in a delicate political game. When the dinner ended, Zara approached him. "You seem distracted," Jack shrugged. "Just thinking about how strange my life's gotten, and about the fact that I saw people sneaking around under the wedding plaza earlier." Her expression sharpened. "What kind of people?" "I couldn't tell, but someone else warned me there might be trouble." Zara glanced around, making sure no one was in earshot. "The timing is concerning. There are factions who oppose my father's rule, and there are those who see a marriage to a human as a weakness." "Great," Jack muttered. "So I'm not just the groom. I'm also the excuse for an assassination." Night before the wedding. That night, Jack couldn't sleep. The moonlight poured through the crystal walls, casting shifting patterns across the floor. He kept thinking about the figures under the plaza. What were they doing? Setting traps? Planting explosives? Finally, he got up, pulled on his boots, and decided to take a walk. The guards at his door gave him a long look, but didn't. "Stop him!" He told them he needed air. He wandered through the quieter sections of the Royal Hall, passing through long corridors and balconies that overlooked the ocean. Eventually, he reached a service stairwell that led down toward the lower maintenance tunnels. Down in the shadows, the air grew cooler and damper as Jack descended. The faint hum of machinery mixed with the distant roar of waves. At the base level, the tunnels branched in several directions. Jack kept to the shadows, listening. Soon, he heard voices, low, urgent, speaking a language he didn't recognize. Crept closer and peeked around the corner. There they were, 6 figures dressed in dark, flexible armor, faces hidden behind visors. They were setting small devices along the underside of the plaza's main supports. Jack didn't need to be an engineer to recognize explosives when he saw them. His stomach tightened. Whoever these people were, they weren't here to decorate. Close call, Jack pulled back, heart pounding. He needed to tell someone, Zara, the commander, anyone. but as he turned to leave, his boots scraped against the floor. The sound was faint, but in the quiet tunnel, it might as well have been a thunderclap. One of the figures turned sharply, visor glinting in the dim light. A metallic click echoed as the figure raised a weapon. Jack bolted. The tunnels rang with shouts in that same strange language, followed by the sharp hiss of energy bolts hitting the walls near him. Sparks flew. Jack ducked around corners, taking random turns until he spotted a stairwell leading up. He burst out into an open courtyard near the guest wing, panting. The guards there looked at him in alarm. "Sabotage!" Jack gasped. "Under! The plaza! Armed! People! Explosives!" The commander's response. Minutes later, Jack was standing in the commander's private chamber, still catching his breath. Zara was there too, her eyes fixed on him. "You're certain of what you saw?" the commander asked, his deep voice deadly serious. "Certain," Jack said. "6 of them, planting charges under the main platform." The commander nodded once and barked an order to the guards. "Seal the tunnels. Triple the watch. No one passes without my order." Zara's gaze softened, just slightly, as she looked at Jack. "You could have stayed in your quarters. You could have ignored it." Jack gave a small shrug. "Yeah, but then tomorrow would have been really bad for both of us." The final warning. The commander stepped closer to Jack. "You have done well, human, but this threat is not yet ended. Whoever sent these saboteurs will not stop with one attempt." Jack swallowed. "And I'm guessing tomorrow will be lively?" The commander's black eyes glinted. "Tomorrow will be dangerous. Stay close to my daughter at all times." Zara looked at Jack, and for the first time, there was no anger in her expression, only a calculating wariness. "Very well," she said quietly. "If we must stand together tomorrow, then we will." Jack gave her a half smile. "Guess this wedding just got a little more interesting. And that's where part 2 ends, with the tension high, the threat clear, and the uneasy alliance between Jack and Zara beginning to form. The morning of the wedding came too quickly. Jack Marin woke up in his guest quarters to the sound of distant bells ringing over the ocean. Soft light poured through the crystal walls, painting the floor with rippling blue reflections. He sat, up slowly, rubbing his eyes. His whole body felt tense. He wasn't nervous about marriage. Well, okay, he was. But it was the other thing. The sabotage, the shadowy figures in the tunnels. He doubted they had given up after last night. The guard's arrival chime sounded at his door. 2 Lumari guards entered, their ceremonial armor gleaming like wet coral. "It is time for preparation," one of them said. Jack sighed. "Yeah, let's get this over with." They led him through the guest wing into a dressing chamber. Inside was a Lumari tailor, a tall, elegant woman with silver fins along her head. She presented him with his wedding attire, a long robe of deep blue sea silk, embroidered with swirling patterns that seemed to move like real waves. Jack slipped into the robe. It was lighter than it looked, soft against his skin. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. "You look like you belong to the sea," the tailor said with a small smile. "More like I'm about to drown in it," Jack muttered. A quiet exchange. From there, the guards brought him to a private hall where Zara was waiting. She wore a shimmering dress that flowed like liquid silver, and her hair was braided with tiny strands of glowing coral. Jack had to admit, she looked incredible. Zara's black eyes studied him. "You clean up better than I expected." "Thanks," Jack said. "You too. Though I guess you do this kind of thing more often." "Not quite like this," she replied dryly. They stood in silence for a moment before Jack leaned closer. "About last night, the commander's people actually find anything in the tunnels?" Zara's expression darkened. 3 of the saboteurs were caught. The others escaped. Jack's stomach tightened. which means they might try again. Her gaze was steady, which means they will try again. Stay close to me. The procession. The ceremony was to be held in the central plaza, a massive circular platform surrounded by flowing water channels. It was already packed with thousands of Lumari, nobles, merchants, and officials, all dressed in shades of blue and silver. Musicians played strange, beautiful instruments that sang like whales. The air smelled faintly of ocean flowers, and glowing lanterns swayed gently in the breeze. Jack and Zara entered from opposite sides of the plaza, each escorted by guards. The crowd turned to watch, and the music swelled. Jack kept his head up, but his eyes scanned the edges of the plaza. Every shadow, every movement made his pulse quicken. Something feels wrong as they approached the central altar, a raised platform made of polished shellstone. Jack noticed a figure in the far corner. It wasn't the ceremonial guard. This person was dressed in dark, flexible armor, half hidden behind a decorative pillar. The figure's head turned, and Jack caught the faint glint of a visor. His instincts screamed. He leaned toward Zara and muttered, "We've got company." She didn't look at him, but her voice was sharp. "Where?" "Far right, behind the pillar. And maybe more I can't see." Zara's lips barely moved. "When we reach the altar, stay one step behind me." The first shot, they stepped up, onto the altar. The High Commander stood there, towering over the crowd, ready to begin the vows. Jack was trying to focus on him when a flash of movement caught his eye. The armored figure raised an energy rifle. "Down!" Jack shouted, lunging toward Zara. A bolt of searing blue energy ripped through the air, striking the stone where she'd been standing a split second earlier. Shouts erupted in the crowd. The guards reacted instantly, raising shields. But more. Shots rang out from multiple directions. Chaos in the plaza. The wedding dissolved into chaos. People screamed and scattered. Guards rushed toward the shooters, but the attackers were fast, leaping across the water channels, firing as they moved. Zara ducked behind a ceremonial pillar with Jack. She drew a sleek Lumari blaster from beneath her dress, its surface etched with glowing patterns. "Stay behind me," she ordered. "Not a chance," Jack shot back, peeking around the pillar to spot the nearest gunman. One of the assassins had climbed onto a decorative arch and was aiming at the High Commander. Jack grabbed a serving tray from a nearby table and hurled it like a disc. It struck the assassin's weapon, knocking it sideways just as they fired. The shot went wide, hitting a lantern instead. The fight turns personal. More assassins poured in from the outer ring of the plaza. Jack realized this wasn't just a hit on Zara. It was a coordinated strike against the Lumari leadership. A blaster bolt scorched the stone near his head. Jack dropped low and grabbed the fallen weapon of a downed guard. It was heavier than he expected, but he managed to fire a few covering shots toward the attackers. Beside him, Zara moved like water, calm, precise, every shot finding its mark. Jack couldn't help but be impressed. "You've done this before," he said between shots. She didn't look at him. "You think being a High Commander's daughter means sitting in a tower all day?" Close quarters, the fight spilled onto the altar itself. One of the assassins leaped up, a short energy blade humming in their hand. Jack barely had time to react before the blade slashed toward him. He blocked with the stolen blaster, the weapon's frame sizzling as the blade cut into it. The assassin pressed forward, forcing Jack back toward the edge of the platform. Zara spun and fired, hitting the attacker in the side. They fell into the water below, vanishing beneath the surface. Jack exhaled shakily. "Thanks." "Do not make me save you again," Zara said, but there was no real bite in her tone. The commander holds the line. The High Commander himself was fighting now, wielding a long ceremonial spear with deadly precision. Jack caught glimpses of him moving through the fray, striking down attackers with sweeping blows. But even with the commander's strength, the attackers weren't retreating. They seemed willing to fight to the last. A sudden blast rocked the plaza, knocking Jack and Zara to the ground. Smoke filled the air. Through it, Jack saw one of the assassins sprinting toward Zara with a grenade-like device. Jack's move, without thinking, Jack charged. He tackled the assassin from the side, both of them hitting the ground hard. The device skittered away, bouncing down into the water channel. The assassin snarled in an alien tongue, punching Jack in the ribs. Jack grunted but held on, wrestling. The attacker for control of their weapon. A sharp crack sounded. Zara had fired, and the assassin went limp. Jack rolled off, breathing hard. "That's twice now I've saved you." Zara's lips curved in the faintest smile. "And twice I've saved you. We are even." The last push, the Lumari guards finally began to gain the upper hand. Several assassins were captured, their weapons confiscated. Others dove into the water and vanished, clearly retreating. Jack looked around at the damage, overturned tables, shattered lanterns, scorch marks on the altar. The crowd was gone, scattered into the safety of nearby buildings. The High Commander approached, his armor scorched but intact. He looked from Jack to Zara. "You both fought well. Without your warning and your actions, this day would have ended in blood." Jack wiped sweat from his brow. It almost did. An unwelcome realization. One of the captured assassins was dragged forward. As the commander's guards pulled off the attacker's visor, Jack's eyes widened. "I know this guy," he said. "He's a pirate, works for the Kavar Dominion." The commander's expression hardened. "The Dominion seeks to destabilize our leadership. Your marriage, Zara, was meant to be a sign of unity. They would see it destroyed." Zara met Jack's gaze. "Then they will try again. Perhaps not today, but soon." A new agreement back in the safety of the royal hall, Jack and Zara sat in a quiet side chamber. "Well," Jack said, "that was the most exciting wedding I've never actually finished." Zara looked at him. "The ceremony can be completed tomorrow. But until the threat is ended, neither of us is safe." Jack leaned back in his chair. "So, we work together?" Her black eyes studied him. "Yes. Until this danger is over, we stand as one. Afterward, we will see." Jack smiled faintly. "Guess I'm your partner now, in more ways than one." Zara didn't smile, but her voice was softer than before. "Do not make me regret it, human." Jack never thought he would be sneaking through the shadowy back alleys of an alien capital city, much less with his accidental bride-to-be leading the way. Yet here he was, crouching low behind glowing crates of imported fruit while Zara peeked. Around the corner, scanning for patrols. "This is insane," Jack muttered under his breath. 2 days ago, I was delivering cargo. Now I'm dodging assassins." "You're the one who followed me," Zara whispered sharply. "If you had stayed in your guarded quarters like a sensible person—" "They were probably watching my quarters," Jack interrupted. "You'd be doing this alone. And if I'm marrying into this mess, I'd rather not die before the cake." Zara's eyes narrowed, but she didn't argue. Instead, she nodded for him to follow. The air was heavy down here in the Undercity, thick with the scent of metallic dust, fried street food, and some kind of spiced steam leaking from pipes overhead. The upper spires of the Lumari capital were all shimmering towers and bright crystal bridges. Down here, under the glimmer, it was a maze of narrow passages, flickering neon signs, and faces that vanished into shadows when they passed. Jack adjusted the strap of the small satchel slung across his chest. Inside was a stolen data pad, retrieved from the debris of the mercenaries' ambush. It was locked, encrypted in Lumari script, but Zara had sworn she could read it. She claimed it would tell them where the mercenaries were hiding. They reached a half-open door, glowing faint green. Zara slipped inside, motioning for Jack to follow. It was a cramped, dim-lit tavern filled with whispering patrons and drifting clouds of scented vapor. The bartender, a squat alien with silver scales, looked up and gave Zara a curt nod. "This is safe?" Jack asked quietly. "For now," she replied. "This place belongs to a friend. He won't betray us." The bartender slid them into a back room, closing the door behind them. A single lamp lit the table, and Zara immediately pulled the datapad from Jack's satchel. Her fingers moved quickly over the alien symbols, the light reflecting off her. Silver bangles. Jack leaned back in his chair, watching her work. "You're good at this." "I have had to be," she replied without looking up. "Do you think growing up as the High Commander's daughter means safety? It only means more people are watching for your mistakes." That caught Jack's attention. "So this isn't just about honor laws." Zara hesitated, then finally set the datapad down. "No. The marriage is a political move. My father is under pressure. By marrying me off quickly, he removes me from the line of succession. That means fewer assassination attempts, or so he thinks." Jack let out a slow whistle. "And then I walked into your life, literally, and handed him the perfect excuse." "Exactly," Zara said flatly. "And now someone is paying mercenaries to make sure I don't live long enough to be a problem. You were never the target, until you saved me." Jack gave a small shrug. "Guess I have a bad habit of jumping into trouble." Zara's lips twitched, almost into a smile. She tapped the datapad again, then turned it so he could see. "Here, this is the location." Jack leaned over. "Looks like some kind of storage bay?" "In the Undercity's old docking sector," she confirmed. "Smugglers, mercenaries, and criminals meet there. If the pirates are here, they'll have guards." Jack rubbed his jaw. "Then we need a plan." They left the tavern through a different door, taking a winding path deeper into the city's lower levels. The air grew colder, and the lighting dimmed until the only illumination came from the pale strips embedded in the ground. The sounds of the bustling markets faded, replaced by the occasional clang of metal or hiss of venting steam. They reached the docking sector, a vast underground chamber with rusted platforms suspended over black water. Massive chains hung from the ceiling, and the air smelled of oil and salt. Jack could see cargo containers stacked in rows, and between them, flickers of movement. "Guards," he murmured. Zara nodded. "We'll go around. Follow me." They moved silently, keeping low and sticking to the shadows. Jack counted at least 6 armed figures patrolling, all wearing mismatched armor and carrying weapons that looked like they'd been stolen from half a dozen different worlds. One of them had the distinctive posture and swagger of the pirate captain Jack had recognized before. They reached a higher platform, giving them a better view. In the center of the docking bay, a group of mercenaries sat around a table talking over a glowing holomap. Zara zoomed in with a small monocular device. "They're planning to hit the wedding," she said quietly. "See there? Those red marks? That's the ceremonial hall." Jack studied the map. "And these blinking dots?" "Explosives," she said grimly. "They're going to plant them before the guests arrive." Jack felt his stomach knot. "We need to stop them before they leave." But before they could move, a shadow fell across them. Jack turned and found himself staring down the barrel of a blaster rifle. They were dragged from the platform and shoved toward the center of the docking bay. The mercenaries laughed, recognizing Zara immediately. "Well, well," the pirate, Captain drawled, stepping forward. His armor was patched with red and black plates, and a jagged scar ran from his cheek to his jaw. "The bride herself, walking into our den. And you brought the human. Brave, but stupid." Zara glared at him. "You won't get away with this." The captain grinned. "I already have. By the time your people realize you're missing, the EA wedding will be over, and the Lumari capital will be in chaos." Jack stepped forward slightly. despite the blaster pointed at his chest. "You're making a mistake. If you start a war with the Lumari, Earth will get dragged in. And trust me, you don't want that." The captain laughed. "Humans are just another species to crush. Your threats mean nothing." Zira's voice was ice. "You underestimate humans." Before the captain could reply, Jack acted. He shoved the guard closest to him, twisting the blaster out of his hands. A shot went wild, sizzling past the captain's head. Zara kicked another mercenary in the knee, grabbing his weapon. The docking bay erupted into chaos. Blaster fire lit the air. Jack dove behind a crate, firing short bursts to keep the mercenaries back. Zara moved like a shadow, her shots precise and controlled. The pirate captain barked orders, trying to regroup his men. "Zara, we can't take them all," Jack shouted. "I know," she called back. "The exit, to the left." They sprinted toward a narrow metal bridge spanning the black water. Mercenaries chased them, shots ricocheting off the railings. Halfway across, the bridge shuddered as someone activated the retract mechanism. Jack didn't think. He grabbed Zara's arm and leapt. They hit the far platform hard, rolling to absorb the impact. Alarms were blaring now, echoing through the chamber. The mercenaries didn't follow immediately. They were too busy trying to stop the platform's collapse. Jack and Zara ran until their lungs burned, ducking through a series of tunnels until they reached a quieter sector. Only then did they stop. Jack leaned against the wall, breathing hard. "That was close." Zara was pale, but her voice was steady. "They'll try again, and now they know we're on to them." Jack glanced at her. "You okay?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes. And thank you. Again." Jack shrugged. "Guess I'm getting used to saving you." For the first time since they met, Zara smiled. A small, real smile. "I still think this wedding is madness, but if I have to go through with it, I'm glad you're the one standing there." Jack didn't know what to say to that. Instead, he straightened. "We need to warn your father, and we need to stop those explosives before they get anywhere near the hall." Zara's expression hardened again, but now there was a spark of trust in her eyes. "Then we work together. Partners?" Jack extended his hand. "Partners." She clasped it firmly. "Let's end this." They made their way back toward the surface, taking a hidden route through maintenance shafts. Zara contacted a trusted aide via a secure channel, warning him to check the ceremonial hall for intrusions. But the aide's reply made her frown. "They're already inside," she said grimly. "We don't have much time." Jack tightened the strap on his satchel. "Then we go straight there, no detours." They emerged into the upper city under the glow of the twin moons, crystal spires glittering against the dark sky. But the beauty of the scene felt hollow now, with danger moving beneath it like a shadow. Somewhere in that hall, mercenaries were planting explosives, and the clock was ticking. Cliffhanger. As they approached the hall from a side street, a sleek black skimmer slid into their path. The doors opened, revealing the pirate captain inside, smiling like a predator. "Going somewhere, bride and groom?" he said, leveling his blaster. The sun rose over the crystalline spires of Lumaris Prime, its golden light reflecting off the vast ceremonial hall like 1,000 tiny stars. Jack Marin stood in a side chamber, dressed in a ceremonial robe so heavy it felt like it could anchor him to the planet. His shoulder still ached from the burn he had taken while saving Zara during the attack 2 days ago, but there was no time to think about the pain now. Today was the day, the wedding, except it wasn't just a wedding anymore. It was a trap. Jack had overheard enough during their escape from the mercenaries' undercity hideout to know the truth. The Kavar Dominion had placed explosives under the altar and planted armed infiltrators in the guest crowd. The plan was clear. Kill Zara in front of every Lumari leader, destabilize the government, and give the Dominion a perfect chance to strike. But the Dominion hadn't counted on one thing. Jack wasn't going to let it happen. In another room, Zara stood before a mirror, her long silver hair braided with ceremonial beads that shimmered with soft light. She didn't look afraid, but her reflection betrayed a quiet tension. 2 days ago, she had been ready to see Jack as nothing more than an inconvenience. Now, she saw something else. He had risked his life for her, more than once, and despite everything, he had chosen to stay when escape was an option. When the door opened, Jack stepped inside, his robe still slightly crooked. "We've got a problem," he said quietly. Zara's eyes narrowed. "What now?" "Explosives," he whispered. "Under the altar, mercenaries in the crowd. They want to make sure this marriage ends before it starts." Zara's expression hardened. "How sure are you?" "Sure enough to bet my life on it," Jack said. Again. For a moment, Zara looked at him, then gave a small nod. "Then we act together. We keep calm, we keep smiling, and we stop them." The ceremonial hall was vast, its arched ceiling hung with banners of deep blue and silver. The air shimmered faintly with a protective energy field, designed to repel weapons fire. But Jack knew the mercenaries would have smuggled in shield-piercing tech. Thousands of guests filled the seats, nobles in jeweled robes, ambassadors from far-off worlds, and high-ranking officers of the Lumari fleet. The High. Commander, Zara's father, stood near the altar, his proud stance hiding the weight of years. He gave Jack a long, unreadable look as they approached. "You are ready?" the commander asked. Jack forced a smile. "Couldn't be readier." Zara spoke before her father could respond. "We will honor the tradition, father." The commander nodded, satisfied, and motioned for the ceremony to begin. They walked together down the long crystalline aisle, the hum of the energy field above them blending with the soft tones of Lumari instruments. Jack kept his eyes moving, scanning the crowd for suspicious faces. His mind replayed the layout he had memorized, the wiring of the detonators, the possible location of the trigger. Halfway to the altar, he spotted them. 3 figures seated near the center rows, hands hidden in their robes. Their faces were calm, but their eyes followed Zara with predatory focus. Jack leaned closer to her. 3 rows in, center left. Don't look. "I see them," Zara murmured without turning her head. As they reached the altar, the Lumari priest began the opening words. The crystal floor beneath their feet glowed softly, a tradition meant to symbolize the purity of the union. Jack, however, was focused on the faint vibration he could feel through the floor, the hum of the explosive charge's power source. He needed a distraction. When the priest asked Jack to recite the human translation of the vows, Jack deliberately fumbled with his robe, stepping slightly off the ceremonial mat. He crouched as if adjusting the heavy fabric, but his hand brushed against the crystal floor's edge, finding the seam where the maintenance hatch lay hidden. Zara, catching on, raised her voice in a firm and almost playful tone. "You are already struggling with the robes? Perhaps you are not ready for the duties of a husband?" The crowd laughed politely. The priest smiled indulgently, and all eyes shifted to Zara. Jack used the moment to lift the small crystal panel and peer inside. Wires, glowing with the same pale blue as the explosives they had seen in the mercenary hideout. He traced them quickly with his eyes, finding the control node, too dangerous to pull. He'd have to disable the signal receiver instead. From the corner of his vision, Jack saw one of the mercenaries shift. Their hand moved inside the robe, fingers tightening on what Jack guessed was the detonator device. Jack straightened and spoke loudly, pretending to be nervous. "Sorry, I just needed a moment to breathe." Zara tilted her head slightly, the signal they had agreed on earlier. She turned to the crowd, lifting her ceremonial dagger high, as though beginning the next part of the vows. The bright blade caught the light, momentarily drawing every gaze in the hall. Jack dropped back to the hatch, pulled a small multi-tool from his sleeve, and quickly severed the signal wire. The faint hum under his feet ceased instantly. The bomb was blind now, but the mercenaries weren't giving up. The one holding the detonator suddenly stood, drawing a compact plasma weapon from beneath their robe. They fired, not at Jack, but straight at Zara. Time seemed to slow. Jack moved without thinking, pulling Zara down and spinning them both behind the altar's crystal column. The energy bolt struck the column and shattered harmlessly into light. Shouts filled the hall. The protective field above flared as the guards activated emergency protocols. Zara, still crouched beside Jack, whispered fiercely, "We can't let them escape." Jack grinned despite the chaos. "Wasn't planning to." The two of them moved together, Jack weaving through the crowd while Zara flanked from the opposite side. The mercenaries tried to fight their way out, but Lumari guards were pouring in from every entrance. Jack tackled the first one, wrenching the weapon from their hand and knocking them out with a single punch. Zara engaged the second, her ceremonial dagger now a deadly blur in her hands, not striking to kill, but to disarm and disable. The third mercenary, the leader, made it to the side doors, only to find Jack blocking the way. "You picked the wrong wedding," Jack said. The mercenary lunged, but Jack sidestepped, grabbed their arm, and slammed them into the wall hard enough to drop their gear. Guards swarmed in seconds later, securing all three. Silence slowly returned to the hall, broken only by the crackle of the protective field stabilizing again. The High Commander stepped forward, his gaze moving from the captured mercenaries to Jack and Zara. "You have not only honored my daughter," the commander said, his voice carrying across the hall. "You have defended Lumaris itself." Jack scratched the back of his neck. "Just doing what needed doing." Zara's lips curved into the smallest smile. "And you did it well, husband." The crowd erupted in applause. The ceremony resumed, though it was now less about formality and more about celebration. The priest, still composed despite everything, recited the vows once more. Jack repeated them, his voice steady this time. When Zara spoke hers, her eyes met his and didn't waver. It wasn't a forced union anymore, not entirely. Later, as the sun dipped low over the crystal spires, Jack and Zara stood on the balcony outside the hall, looking over the city. The air was cool, and the sounds of celebration still drifted up from the streets below. "So," Jack said, leaning on the railing, "where do you want to go for the honeymoon?" "Honeymoon?" Zara repeated, as though tasting the unfamiliar word. "It's a human thing. After a wedding, you go somewhere far away and pretend all the politics don't exist for a while." Zara thought for a moment. "Then I choose a place far from Lumaris, and far from the Kavar Dominion. Somewhere quiet." Jack grinned. "I know just the planet. Small, out of the way, makes terrible coffee, but has the best sunsets in the galaxy." Zara gave him a sideways look. "You drive a bargain, human." They stood in silence for a moment, the chaos of the past days finally giving way to something calm. For the first time since they met, neither of them was running, fighting, or arguing. When they finally boarded Jack's ship the next morning, the High Commander was there to see them off. "You have proven yourself, Jack Marin," he said, "not only as a protector of my daughter, but as a friend to Lumaris." Jack nodded respectfully. "I'll take care of her. You have my word." The commander's eyes softened just slightly. "See that you do." As the ship lifted away from the glittering towers of Lumaris Prime, Zara settled into the co-pilot seat. Jack glanced at her, then back at the stars ahead. "Ready?" he asked. She looked out at the endless expanse of space. "More than ready." The stars stretched into streaks as the ship jumped to faster than light, leaving behind the world, where their strange story had begun, and heading toward whatever came next. Together.